Welcome to our video. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Concepts. This video training is an organizational checklist, and it serves as a quick start guide. And we call them laser lessons because they're dealing with one particular problem, and we're going to give you a solution to help solve your problem. Pretend that we're sitting across the table at lunch. You ask me, Marshall, how do I get my ministry organized? And I'm going to answer everything I can in between the salad and the dessert. And so as we begin our journey here, realize a couple of things. First is the structure of your ministry doesn't cause growth. If all I had to do was organize a church or another nonprofit and make it organized enough and I was guaranteed that it was going to grow, it would make it very easy or easier to do. But really the organization or the structure doesn't necessarily cause growth. The structure of your ministry, of your church, usually determines how fast your ministry will grow and the size to which you will grow. So as your ministry grows from a small church, meaning under 200, to a medium-sized church, meaning between 200 and 400, or a large church, 400 and up to wherever you want to start mega church, or the next label for a large church, the organization of that, of each one of those sizes, has to be adapted and adjusted in order to let it grow. Organization matters. So, while there is no perfect structure, we suggest that you organize around four things. Jot them down. Number one, you organize around the calling that God has given your church. How you carry out the Great Commission. Why are you there? Number two, you organize around your congregation. Who has God provided up to this point, provided for you to equip for the work of the ministry? So you look at their giftedness, their personality, their experience, their heart and passion. You look at all these different areas, their natural abilities. Third thing you look at is your community. How are you going to bridge both your congregation with your calling to your community? So all in all, the fourth thing you're looking at, along with your calling as a church, your congregation as a people, your community as a mission field, is your context. You look contextually at how you're going to organize your ministry so that you can be effective. And you want to be efficient while you become effective. So as we start through this, let me give you a rule. And that is, there is a power that comes with preparing and planning. And so I put together just a little saying that I use in each one of these laser lessons with dealing with organization. That is, proper preparation, planning, and processes prevent poor performance. During the four phases of ministry design, we're dealing today with the design of your ministry, to organize it, to coordinate and orchestrate, to bring collaboration together in every way so that your ministry can effectively carry out its calling, using the congregation that God has given you to reach the community that he has put you in, all along being fully aware of the entire context of your ministry that takes in everything. So here's a quick start guide, and let's first talk about the congruency of your ministry. First, let's talk about alignment. Alignment is dealing with your head. This is intellectual consent. Does your ministries, your programming, for all your programming, projects, events, and activities, does it resonate with everyone where they agree with it? So this deals with the head. Attunement deals with their heart. This means their will. Have you ever heard the expression, their heart just wasn't in it? Are people's will submitted? In other words, have they bought into and taken ownership of a particular project or program that they are involved in serving in, that they are some way contributing to? The will must be submitted and the passion aligned. And so when you look at your ministry congruence, both your overall ministry and individual ministries and individual personnel and people who are working in each one of these ministries, are they mentally in alignment? Is their heart and passion in attunement with what you're doing? And thirdly, do you see agreement? I interpret agreement as their hands. So head, heart, and hands. Here's the rule. People's actions speak louder than their words. They can run their mouth all they want to, that they agree with what you're doing, that they're passionate about the program or the people you're trying to reach or how you're going about it. But if their life does not match up with what they're saying to you, then you know if their conduct doesn't produce the evidence, then their head and their heart, they aren't in it. They haven't really bought into what you're doing. So what you're looking to summarize all this, you're looking to see if everything is in one accord. Are they in agreement, attunement, and alignment? Are your ministries in accord with what God has called you to do, using the people that he's given you in your congregation to reach your mission field, your community, and you've taken into accord, you've taken into consideration your entire context. And so as we look at these four things, can you say that every one of your ministries are in alignment with your values, mission, and vision of your church? Are they in attunement, where everybody's heart's in it? Are they in agreement so that they're showing by the way they live out their life? They show up. You don't have to beg them. You don't have to call them on the phone saying, where are you? You forgot your responsibility. They've made it a priority so that everything is in one accord with your ministry. You're looking for health and fitness for your ministry to be both efficient and effective. You organize because it's going to dictate and determine how fast are you going to grow by making disciples that make disciples, and how large will you grow? How many people can you affect in your community? How well you organize may not cause you to grow, but it's sure going to determine how fast you grow and how big you grow. So looking at our ministry congruence, do you have any questions? If you do, pause the video right now, scroll down to the comment and question section, type it in. Do not punch, do not click submit. Wait until you're finished watching the video or it will start it over again. So as we continue with this, let's look for a moment at the ministry design congruence. This is where we get into key things like your congregational code. Your congregational code, and I know you weren't taught anything about this in seminary. We've had to learn it as we've done it on the job training, and there's a few guys talking about it, but I call it the essence and soul of a group of people. Now, you can end up with a congregation inside your congregation. Sometimes the paid staff all agree with the senior pastor or the lead pastor, and you end up with a mini congregation, a subgroup of people within the church congregation that is thinking one way. So when you look at your congregation, can you concisely state exactly who are they in their personality, in their culture, in their code, their core? Who are they at the very essence of their soul? So when you stop and look then at the individual programs, projects, events, and activities, and do you have a subculture within perhaps your children's ministry where they're going one direction, but really the whole church is supposed to be headed in another direction? Or they've got their own vision, and it's dueling vision with the congregation's overall vision for that ministry. You want to look for congruence, and that is compliance with what your ministry is supposed to be doing. You don't want it having double vision, double mission, double set of values, a strategic plan that is not congruent. So let's look at each one of these parts, and you begin to see that the personality and the programming and personnel, is it in one accord what the overall code of who your congregation and staff are? Or do you find yourself divided? And this is a real troubled thing, because you start to carry out or to create a new program or project that you're wanting to do, and it violates your congregational code of who they are. Let me give you a quick example. When you think of Sears and Roebuck, Sears department store, what do you think of? Do you think of frilly, lacy clothing and bed sheets and dresses and ruffles? Or do you think of power tools, yard equipment, construction equipment? Do you think of craftsman tools? Do you think of hard stuff, man stuff? Well, when I think of it, and I think the branding of Sears through the years has been the harder side of Sears. But years ago, I'm told they did a marketing campaign on the softer side of Sears. If I understand correctly and remember correctly, that kind of went over like a lead balloon. I may have just slandered the company, and that's not my intent. But when you're known as a hard men store with hard things like tools and equipment and power tools and chainsaws and tractors and lawnmowers, and they used to be able to sell a whole kit to build a house. I mean, that was who they were. That was their code. And then you move to the softer side of Sears, where you're talking about the softer side, like bed sheets and pillows and clothing and things that aren't hard. It goes against it, and it kind of failed the campaign. That's congregational code. You may not see it with your logical, reasonable side of your brain. You see it with intuition and begin to summarize it up. And so a congregation may never identify what their code is, but you may identify who they are, that they kind of feel like, well, it's us four and no more. And they're not outreach oriented, or their code is we don't rock the boat, so they don't want any change. They want to keep the key players in your church happy. That's what I mean by congregational code. Those are two actual codes that are prevalent through churches in North America. The next item are core values. Whether you've identified your core values or not, you have genuine, actual core values. They are a reality of what you really value more than anything else. If you want to discover your core values, you're going to look at your how you use your manpower, what your main ministry focus is, and your money. You're going to look at their conversations and what you promote the most. It's what you value the most. And so 3 words commonly come off my lips when I am coaching churches with their core values. The first one is everybody has actual core values. You may conceal them and hide them or wish that no one would expose them, but you got them. The second one is aspirational. We all know that we should aspire to love the Savior, the Scriptures, and souls. But our actual core values may value more about us four and no more and don't rock the boat. And so we find ourselves pacifying and placating the key players in our church, the matriarch and patriarch. Core values then has a third word. We know we have actual. We know we should aspire to biblical ones, the ones that are important to God. And the third one brings about revival, repentance, refreshment, revitalization. Is you can adopt God's aspirational values that you know should be there, but when core values are in alignment with God, within the framework of who God says we're to be as His children and as a church, Christ's bride, that they're going to look and be a little different from church to church, and it drives the third thing, and that is your defined mission. Your mission here, let me just say this to you, try and avoid mission drift, and that's where you get off of God's calling on your church, how you're going to fulfill the Great Commission to make disciples that make disciples. You can do it different than the church across the street or the church across town. That's fine, but often what happens over time when you've been running ministry in a certain design, that people don't marry their mission. They end up marrying their methods. instead of their mission. And methods have a shelf life. They die away. The context or the community or the culture you're in changes, and how you go about carrying out your mission has to adapt and adjust and change. And so my exhortation to you is, don't marry your methods, your ministry methods, how you carry out your mission. Marry your mission, because your mission doesn't change, but how you fulfill your mission, well, it's going to change, which leads to the next one, and that is, you ought to have vision clarity. Now, let's just test your vision. State your vision. Pause the video and state your vision statement, word for word. Go ahead, I'll wait. Well, were you able to do it? So let's test your vision statement. Is your vision written in a clear, concise, creative, compelling, contagious way? Let me say that again so you can catch it. I just jot it down. Is your vision statement, the way that you've done it, whether it fits on a t-shirt, in a paragraph, or a couple of pages, is your vision stated clearly, concisely, creatively, compellingly, and contagiously? And the way that you know that is if you look at the percentage of your congregation that is actively involved in and through your ministry to fulfill your mission, through serving in and through your programs, your projects, your events, and your activities. Are they faithfully carrying out in a missional way the calling that is on their life and on the life of your congregation? You'll know whether or not your vision is clear and that your mission has been properly defined and that they've married your mission and not your methods, particularly when you go to change your methods. Do they prize and give priority to the things that God does? And is it a part of who they are? If you can say yes to all of that, you're well on your way to being able to do the next thing. And that is your strategic plan for every program, project, event, and activity in your church needs to be whole and pulled together. You can take two cats and unite them by tying them by the tail, throwing them in a burlap sack, and throw them over a clothesline, if you know what a clothesline is. Throw them over a fence where you got one on one side and one on the other. Boy, you got unity, but no harmony. They're going to fight like, well, two cats in a burlap sack. And so when you have that, you know you don't have congruence. Your strategic plan, and there are some key words here that I need you to catch because it will help you as you take and understand what your priorities are, your core values, what your mission is, and what your vision is, and you're going to create a strategic plan to fulfill your mission so you can reach your destination, your vision, God's preferred future for your church. This is how you're going to carry out what God's calling on your congregation. So here's the first word. When you look and think about implementing your strategic plan, you're going to mobilize it. So every strategic plan should be mobilized. It is organized and ready to be deployed. That's what mobilize means. So you're going to implement it. It is organized and ready to be implemented, deployed. The second word is monitored. When you launch your strategic plan, you've got to supervise and inspect what's happening. You've got to watch it. You've got to monitor it. You've got to test it, which is the third thing. You've got to measure. Every strategic plan should be mobilized, monitored, and measured. You have to evaluate and assess whether or not the way that you're doing it is working. Is something not right? You take snapshots every time you have your program, project, event, or activity to determine what you're going to measure and how you're going to measure, and everyone knows what your goals are, what you're trying to accomplish, and as you measure it to determine if you need to do the third thing, and that's every strategic plan needs to be modified. Always changing something because you're adjusting to changing circumstances, you're adapting to a new environment, and you're adopting new ways of doing ministry. Your strategic plan is not just a notebook that's thrown on the shelf that you just spent a lot of time and other resources to develop, and you don't mobilize it, monitor it, measure it, and modify it so that you continue to do the fifth thing. Every strategic plan has to be managed, and you're going to repeat the process of monitoring, measuring, and modifying your strategic plan as you mobilize it week in and week out, day in and day out. A quick start guide to your organization is to take your strategic plan and follow these 5 steps. You repeat the cycle where you continue to manage your mobilization, your monitoring, your measuring, and your modifying. You continue to monitor what you're doing so that you can adjust and adapt and adopt so that you succeed. Don't just start it and leave it, but continue to improve it, and you have to lead it and manage it to make that happen. Now, let me give you 11 key areas to focus on when you are organizing your ministries, whether it's program, project, an event, or activity. We have produced a series with multiple videos in it and broken down 90 or so checkpoints as a checklist in 4 different categories to help you. But in this laser lesson, I'm just giving you 11 key areas to focus on. And so the first one is your philosophy. The philosophy of your ministry is why you do what you do. This includes your personal set of beliefs and values that guide your every action. They're drivers. That's what a core value is. Our beliefs drive our behavior. So you need to look as a key area of organizing your church. Is everything in congruence? Is every program, project, event, and activity in congruence with your philosophy of ministry? Does each ministry align with your values, your mission, and vision? As you should start to see, all of this is building one on another, like building a building, a layer of stones or bricks stacked one on the other. Does each ministry fit within your existing ministry design? So your philosophy is a cornerstone of why you do ministry the way you do it. What is your purpose? Which leads to the second one. Your purpose is the what you are striving to accomplish. The philosophy is the why you do what you do. Purpose is the what you are trying to accomplish. This is your stated goals or objectives or intents and aims. You're trying to win souls and make disciples as a church and to honor God in all of it. So as you go about to do this, I separate in my mind my overall purpose and my mission. My purpose is to carry out 1 Corinthians 10:31. Whatsoever you eat or drink or whatsoever you do, do all to the glory of God. I live to honor God, to give the right impression of who Christ is, to please him. My mission, I want to carry out in a way to please him, to give the right impression of who he is, to bring honor and glory to his name, to give him full credit, and to have people get the right understanding of who God is, to see him clearly. My mission is how I carry out the Great Commission in Matthew 28, and I want to do it in the posture of the Great Commandment, to love God with all my heart, mind, and soul, and to love my neighbor as myself, to love them as God loves them. But you better understand what your purpose is. So let me ask you, in one sentence, what is the purpose of each of your ministries within your church? Are you trying to accomplish what? You trying to teach them, reach them, train them, serve them? What are you trying to do in that ministry? What is the purpose of it? What would a fulfilled purpose and an achieved mission look like for each one of your programs, projects, events, and activities that you're doing? Have you developed a strategic plan for every one of those that fits within the overall game plan for your church, for your ministry overall? Every program, project, event, and activity should fit within your ministry design. They are to be in alignment with your values, your mission, and your vision. So you need to know how every one of these fits within your overall game plan. Now, here's an important thing. It's one of the 11 key areas I would tell you to focus on as you organize your existing ministries. And that is the who for which your ministry is created. These are the individuals you're trying to reach or teach or serve. So, who are your target groups? Have you clearly decided who every one of your programs, projects, events, and activities are trying to reach or teach or serve or equip or whatever, whoever and whatever you're trying to accomplish there? How will the ministry impact the target groups spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally? You know, what do you want to happen? But you need to know who it's designed for. You say, well, Marshall, everybody's welcome in our church. But your programs may be age graded. They might be graded for the particular marital status of the people that you're trying to reach, both in your church and out of your church. And that's another thing. Are you trying to minister to the people in your church, your congregation, or to your community, or both? And by the way, I was told by Tom Rainer through one of the things that research he did, that 95% of the programs and projects churches are using today in North America are to benefit the congregation, the members of the church. Only 5% are for the community. I would say that is way out of balance. But you've got to be the architect of your ministry design to determine that. But you better know what people groups, who are you trying to minister to with every program, project, event, and activity that you have in your church. Here's the next one. And there are 11 of them, and that is your personnel. These are the individuals who serve in your ministry. These are the people that you are recruiting and teaching, training, and equipping to carry out your game plans of your programs, projects, events, and activities. They could be pastors on your staff, support staff. They could be volunteer leaders. They could be volunteer workers. They could be directors of ministries or teachers and leaders, workers, and helpers. You need to stop and look at their shape. Shape means their spiritual giftedness, their heart, their passions, what they believe is important to them, that drives them, their abilities, their natural God-given gifts, then their personality and their experience, their shape. And so as you examine each one of these, that you begin to understand how that person is going to work. So you want to look at two things and catch this. How you assemble your team that is serving and carrying out your program, project, event, or activity. How you assemble them together. Number two, how you build them up together to make them fit to carry out their calling. Now, who is on staff and what are their positions? Do you have a job description for every person who is involved in it? So you know who does what, when, and with whom, where, and why. Do you have a chain of command for your each ministry that you have in your church? Do you know how those that are involved are going to report to to who do they report and what do they report? How do you keep up with the paperwork? So how will those involved in your program be evaluated, recruited, trained, and installed to serve? How will those involved in the ministries receive ongoing training? All of this is answered under your personnel. Then you ought to have a game plan for every program, project, event, and activity. This is your game plan developed by your philosophy of ministry, your purposes, your programs, your projects you're doing, the policies, the personnel, and the procedures you've got. You need to put together an overall game plan. Then you're going to have a set of priorities. These keep your ministries on track and in line with the scriptures and other authorities that you may have, such as local governing authorities that may tell you you need to do this, this, and this. So what are the essentials and non-essentials to make your ministry successful? Who and what can you cut from your ministry and still be successful? Who and what are your first priorities in ministry? 1, 2, 3, 4. You can't have 20. It waters them down. But what comes first? It's what's mission critical to your individual program, project, event, or activity. It's your priorities that help you know where to put your resources, where to spend your time and your money, where to invest, And every project that you do, every program that you're running weekly or daily or monthly or quarterly has a set of priorities. Write them down so everybody knows what they are and knows how to act, knows how to make decisions. Priorities guide your decision-making process. Then as we continue with this, another one are your policies. These are the rules and regulations for carrying out your program. This gives your ministry structure. It's the do's and don'ts. So what are the do's and don'ts that govern every program, project, event, and activity in your church? Do the do's and don'ts help or hinder you from fulfilling your purpose for that program? Have you thought through how to protect your staff and your students? Have you set priorities for every ministry? Your policies are there so people know the do's and don'ts. Just like your priorities are important, your policies are important. And then let's deal with two things together. Your procedures, this is the what and how you do each one of your programs. It gives your ministry its action steps. So, what are the procedures for how your ministry, where your ministry, when your ministry takes place? How will you accomplish your stated purpose? How will you provide for your staff and the students that are involved in your program? Supplies, curriculum, materials, equipment, tools, the room that is set up and torn down. What are the procedures for that? Who will be responsible for these provisions? Who will protect your staff and your students? Who will be responsible for the protections, the check-ins and check-out procedures that you have for your children's ministry? You have those, don't you? Who will be responsible for those? Have you developed complete processes for every program, project, event, and activity? People need to know what your procedures are. And that goes hand in hand with the next bullet point here, and that is the preparations that you make. These are the special things you do to prepare to operate every program and project, event, and activity that you're doing. So you answer key questions like, what supplies and furniture and equipment are needed? Who's going to provide these? What is needed to make the ministry effective every week or every month or quarterly? How will you prepare for them? How will you get ready for them? How will you communicate to help others? What is your communication processes? And so what does it look like when you get ready for that Sunday morning children's ministry or worship service or a weekly activity that you're doing? You need to know what the preparations are and assign duties, have job descriptions, have a chain of command, but so that people know, well, we got to get prepared for that. It's coming again. Who needs to do what? Think through the preparations for that. We're getting toward the end here for you to focus on the place. This is where your ministry is going to take place. It can be place or places. Where will the program take place? What facilities or grounds will be needed to carry out your ministry? You need to know where you're going to do it. You can't have two groups using the same cubic square inch at the same time. That's going to create a problem. You need to assign places and then all the things it takes to prepare to meet it and to clean up after yourself when you're done. And here's the last one on the list, and that is the price. What is the program or project going to cost in dollars and other resources? How will each ministry be funded? Where's the line item in the budget? If you're starting up a ministry, what is that going to look like? What funds are needed? How much money is needed for the year, annually, quarterly, monthly, weekly? Who's going to spend the money? How are they going to be approved? Are you going to have them reimbursed or give them money ahead of time or use credit cards for this? But you've got to know what it's going to cost because you've got to put it into the budget and fund it. So what is the budget line item for every program, project, event, and activity in your ministry? What other resources are going to be needed along with the price? What is it going to cost you? How is it going to cost you? So as we look at all these things, let me encourage you to give some thoughts to something. If you need more than just really what I've given you as the tip of the iceberg, You need to look back at understanding and look at a 6-part series we produced for you called an organizational checklist. And it's a training series that takes this laser lesson and introduction. As a bonus, we've given you how to vet every ministry idea. It is a pretty lengthy video training with documentation. So if somebody comes to you and says, hey, let's have a ministry to Eskimos or to zebras or to trees, and they come up with this great idea they think that they're passionate about, and you need a way to be able to vet that, we've given you an entire video with a support document giving you one question after another to be able to decide whether or not it's a good idea. So as you go do this, consider logging into our sales page, our ministry design training, and look at the organizational checklist so that you can purchase this entire series. And for a while, we're running it at $39. It includes an introduction. It includes a bonus of how to vet a ministry idea. And then there are 4 training videos that are broken down into 4 categories. Your ministry design, a checklist for that. Manpower, a checklist for that. Management, a checklist for that. And then a 4th one that is marketing and miscellaneous items, a checklist for that. And we go through every single one of these. There are 90 checkpoints through these 4 videos. When you take these together, you should be able to screen and examine and evaluate every single ministry in your church, every program, project, event, and activity to determine where you may be missing important parts to help you make your every ministry you have both efficient but mainly effective. Because what is the rule? The structure doesn't cause your ministry to grow per se, but it does determine how fast you'll grow and to what size you'll grow. And so as you look at this information, let me encourage you to go consider buying this 6-part series that will help you structure your ministry so that you can grow and reach more people for Christ. Well, I'm Marshall Shannon, your ministry design coach. At Ministry Design Training, where you'll find the 6-part series on the organizational checklist, and at Ministry Design Concepts, where you'll find blog posts, podcasts, videos, and a number of other resources to help you with your ministry. You can reach out to me by email or by phone, and we'll be happy to talk with you. May the Lord bless your efforts. May you put this to good use to structure your ministry so that you can reach more people with the gospel and grow them up into Christ-likeness and release them into ministry.